How's it going, everybody? Too Spooky here. In this video today, I figured I'd go back to my roots, as when I first started making videos on this channel, I made a couple different fact videos on various bands I really liked. I definitely enjoyed making them, but my channel just went in a different direction, and the last one I made was all the way back in 2016 on Slipknot. Needless to say, over the past 9 years, I've improved a lot when it comes to research, editing, and making videos in general. And now with the release of their 10th album, I knew it was finally time to tackle my all-time favorite band by counting down 101 facts about Deftones. This one was suggested by a couple of you way back in the day, and unbeknownst to you guys, I planned on making this one all along, so thank you for the suggestion. This video will be covering everything relating to Deftones, including the history of the band, various song meanings, and much, much more. Be sure to comment your favorite Deftones song below, and without any more delay, let's be quiet and begin. Number 1. Deftones are a rock, metal, nu metal, alternative metal, shoegaze, whatever genre you want to call them, band that was formed in Sacramento, California back in 1988. Considering we're now here in 2025, that means the band has been together for around 37 years and are still going strong. The band was formed with founding members Chino Moreno on vocals, Abe Cunningham on drums, and Stephen Carpenter on guitar. The three of them had previously been high school friends together in the local skateboarding scene, and formed the band when they were only about 15 to 17 years old. Soon after, Dominic Garcia would become their fourth member on bass. Abe ended up leaving the band for a few years to play with a different band called Fallacy, so Dominic swapped over to drums, and Chi Cheng would be recruited for bass. Dominic would then leave the band in 1991, and John Taylor would join as the band's drummer until Abe's return in 1993. This would end up being the true lineup of Deftones for a long time, until Frank Delgado would later join the band as the keyboardist and turntablist after working with them on their first 2 albums, officially joining before the release of their third. Due to unfortunate circumstances we'll touch on later, Chi Cheng would end up being replaced by Sergio Vega in 2010. Who would continue to be the band's bassist until 2022, where he would end up departing the band over a contract dispute, to which Fred Sablin would join up as their touring bassist. And while it's a bit up in the air if he's considered a permanent member of the band, he did record the bass for their latest album, and is still with the band as of making this video. As of 2025, Deftones have currently sold over 10 million albums throughout their musical career. Number 2. After playing together for a couple years, the band's first release was back in 1990 or 1991, as there are different reports, where they independently released a 2-track demo, featuring the tracks Answers and Hogberg Hop. It's not known how many copies were made, as the band not only made them by hand, but notably had difficulty making them. About a year later in 1992, they independently released another demo, with 4 tracks. That is infamously known as Like Linus, which consisted of only 15 copies, though when they handed the tapes out to people, it didn't really have a designated name. The 4 tracks available on the tape were of course Like Linus, Hump, Some People, and Plastic. These songs are available on YouTube if you want to give them a listen yourself, and while it's very different from what Deftones would become, you can certainly see their adrenaline sound beginning to take shape, in addition to some elements that they would soon leave behind, like ska and reggae. Additionally, in 2024, that same 4-track demo would become the most expensive cassette tape ever sold on the website Discogs, selling for a whopping $5,000. Within the same 2 years, the band would release another demo tape, simply called The Deftones, with 3 songs this time instead of 4, featuring an alternate version of Like Linus, with the addition of new tracks Christmas and Guest. Unfortunately, not a lot of information is known about the writing or recording process for these songs, and they remain a bit of a mystery to this day. But even so, it marks the beginning of Deftones' musical career. In 1993, they would additionally release a 2-song demo, featuring the first iterations of the songs 7 Words and Engine No. 9, 2 tracks that would end up being featured on their debut album. These demos are also available to listen to on YouTube, and while they're notably much different than the versions on Adrenaline, These demos are the tracks that would get the attention of record labels, eventually leading to the band's first record deal. But we'll cover the full story of that later in the video. Number 3. Deftones would then go on to release their debut album Adrenaline on October 3rd of 1995. Produced by Terry Date, it was released to, at best, a lukewarm response. And the album itself wouldn't really pop onto too many people's radars until after a lot of extensive touring with bands like White Zombie, Kiss, and also Korn. Due to the unique sound of Adrenaline and the time of its release, it also forever gave Deftones the association with nu metal, a labeling that they didn't particularly care for. But due to this album's legacy helping essentially create and popularize that genre, it's a stigma they'll forever live with. Although, after changing their sound and evolving album after album, it's safe to say they don't really fit into that genre anymore. Although it took a while for the album to gain notoriety, Adrenaline would eventually go on to be certified platinum in 2008. When looking back at the album in hindsight, Chino would explain that most of the songs present on Adrenaline were essentially a lot of the first songs they wrote as a band back when they were just kids, and the songs that they wrote exclusively in the studio were very difficult for him in particular, as he didn't really think of himself as a songwriter at the time, so he was very hesitant to actually write lyrics for a lot of the tracks, which is why almost a third of the record has no vocals, and while in the studio, he was making up most of his lyrics on the spot. So a lot of times when Terry Date would have him come back in to re-record something, his lyrics were different almost every time. Because of this, Adrenaline is Chino's least favorite record in the band's discography. That said, Abe and Stefan look back on the record very fondly, and both consider it one of their favorites. Number 4. After a long couple years of touring, and eager to record a new album, Deftones returned to the studio and created the album that would push them even further into stardom, Around the Fur, released on October 28th of 1997 and once again produced by Terry Date. This time around, while not initially knowing where they wanted to take their sound, the band knew they wanted to focus more on the production this time around and create something truly special. Needless to say, that's exactly what they did, creating debatably the heaviest album of their discography, but also showing a much more laid-back and melodic side on songs like Mascara and Be Quiet and Drive, the latter of which also became a hit single for them, along with more extensive touring and appearing in popular concert festivals like Warped Tour and Ozfest. Deftones established themselves as one of the hot new bands in the scene. Around the Fur would eventually go on to be certified platinum in 2011, and to this day, it's unanimously considered one of the band's personal favorite records in their discography. Recorded in only 4 months, the band has described this particular period as almost like capturing lightning in a bottle, as with Adrenaline, they had years of material going into the studio. But with Around the Fur, they were going in with nothing but passion and energy to create something great, and had no set idea of what they were going to come out with. And with all the touring they had done for Adrenaline, they were feeling more confident as a band than they ever had before, which they feel was not only captured on the record, but is also something they were never able to replicate again. Number 5. After the success of Around the Fur, Deftones would go on to create the magnum opus of their musical careers, White Pony. White Pony was their third album, and released on June 20th of 2000, once again produced by Terry Date. At this point, Frank Delgado officially became a member of the group, and added a lot of new ambience and synthesizers to the band's sound that they would later become known for incorporating, most notably on songs like Change and Teenager. This notably also gave White Pony a very unique sound compared to Deftones' previous works, as there were still plenty of heavy moments to be found on this record, but there was also a much more shoegazy mellow sound that dominated the tracklist, and was basically the band's way of making a statement in regards to the current musical landscape that they didn't want to be roped in with. White Pony took the longest to record out of the band's early albums thus far, at around 5 to 6 months. Most of the time was apparently used just trying to write the songs rather than record them. And it wouldn't be until Change came together that the band really started to hit their stride and begin working as a group. Part of what took them so long to cooperate was creative differences between Chino and Stefan. Chino began learning guitar in his spare time, and wanted to contribute his newly found guitar work to the new album. As the previously only guitarist, Stefan kinda felt like his feet were being stepped on, and was against it for the majority of the process. Eventually they found common ground on change, and Chino's guitar work ended up working out for the group in the long run. While not initially received well by fans due to the big change in sound, everyone soon came around, and White Pony would go on to become one of the most influential albums of the early 2000s, and forever cemented Deftones into the history of music and metal. Additionally, White Pony would go on to be certified platinum in 2002, just 2 years after its release. Number 6. After a lot of touring for White Pony, the members of the band split off to work on their own side projects for a while, before reconvening in 2002 to begin recording their 4th album. Back in 2001, Chino also suffered a severe injury to his vocal cords while on tour, and had to take time off with a vocal trainer, as to not damage his voice any further in the future. The name of their 4th album was originally going to be Lovers, but was eventually changed to be self-titled, as Chino thought the Lovers title was too obvious towards the album's content, and additionally decided to remove the title track Lovers from the album entirely as a result, which would have been the first track in place of Hexagram. Although this choice was additionally because Lovers was recorded very late into the self-titled album's production, and they were already incredibly behind schedule, so it was unable to make the final cut. However, the Lovers track was released on the UK release of Hexagram's single as a B-side, and this self-titled album would end up being released on May 20th of 2003, once again produced by Terry Date, although this is the last time he would work with the band for the foreseeable future. To actually write and record the album, the band ended up spending a good sum of money transforming their normal practice space into a home studio, and took 8 months to record, as they apparently didn't have much material prepared ahead of time compared to previous albums, which only made things more frustrating for Terry Date. Although between the writing and the recording, the entire process apparently took a full year. As far as the sound of the album goes, Chi was quoted saying, "We've proven that we can musically go in any direction we want, and we want to get kind of heavy on this one." And that's exactly what they did, releasing some of the heaviest songs in their entire discography, such as Hexagram, which is even more impressive considering Chino had recently recovered from that vocal cord injury, yet his screams are more daunting than ever before. Additionally incorporating more elements of shoegaze on songs like Lucky You and Minerva. This album was fairly well received by fans. However, most fans and critics agreed that it was a step down from their previous monumental achievements on White Pony, with the band's label even considering it a commercial disappointment, to which the band was additionally fined $2.5 million by their label after the release of Self-Titled, because it took them so long to finish it that they missed a bunch of legal deadlines, in addition to the album's poor performance overall. Even though it was considered a disappointment by their label, Self-Titled would still go on to be certified gold only 2 months after release. However, it has yet to be confirmed platinum. Number 7. After touring for Self-Titled concluded, Deftones would enter the darkest period of their band's history from 2004 to 2007, notably also being the closest the band has ever been to completely breaking up. In 2004, following significantly less album sales on their self-titled record, their record label Maverick insisted that the band get back into the studio and start recording a new album immediately. Upon going back into the studio, all of the members were also dealing with their own personal demons, be it with relationships, drugs and alcohol, lawsuits, or just poor mental health. So these problems no doubt contributed to the tension within the group. The band spent the majority of summer 2004 at the Morning View House in Malibu, California, working on new material amongst themselves, and began looking for a new producer shortly after, as Terry Date, frustrated from the recording of Self-Titled, refused to work with them at that time. Regarding the music they created over that summer, Chino described it as very aggressive and straight evil music. With a push from Abe and Chino, the band decided on Bob Ezrin to produce. Recording officially began in November of 2004. However, tension quickly began to arise between Bob and Chino, to the point where Chino basically just up and left to go work on his side project, Team Sleep. And while Chino was off doing that, the rest of the band continued recording their instruments in the meantime. The sessions with Bob concluded, and the band ended up reconvening in their home studio in early 2005. At that time, the band were working to tweak the results from the sessions with Bob, along with write a few more songs in the process. Tensions began to increase during this time, and Chino once again decided to just up and leave to go work with Team Sleep, resulting in their debut album later that year, then proceeding to go on tour with them. According to the rest of the band, Chino didn't even tell them he was taking a break, and instead had to find out all of that on their own, and were pretty upset with the lack of communication, to the point where the band almost called it quits. Although, instead of ending it all, they all decided to go on hiatus, and released the B-Sides and Rarities album to commemorate their 10th anniversary as a band. In early 2006, the band would regroup with a new producer, Sean Lopez, a longtime friend of the band. Chino decided to scrap all the vocals they previously recorded and start over completely, deciding to record all of his vocals away from the other members of the band as well. The silver lining being that the new vocals were some that everyone was happy with. After all the turmoil throughout the entire process, their 5th album, Saturday Night Wrist, would finally be completed and released on Halloween of 2006. Saturday Night Wrist would be received fairly well by critics and fans alike, being a new evolution and direction of the band's sound while still keeping elements of the old. Although it once again didn't sell as well as the previous records. And today, Saturday Night Wrist is considered the band's most divisive work, as while fans agree that some of their best work is present on this album, it also has some of the band's worst. While the majority of the sessions with Bob were scrapped, especially vocally, the sessions with Bob were eventually leaked onto the internet. So if you want to see what Saturday Night Wrist was like in its beta stage, and also listen to a few tracks that didn't make the cut on the album, such as Finger of Death, give it a listen.
We talked about this Taste of Chaos. 2003 was the last time an album came out. It's been a while. Why the long break?
Took a long time to make the record.
Number 8. The band spent the rest of 2006 and the majority of 2007 touring in support of Saturday Night Wrist. But before touring began, they had a meeting with their management in regards to the future of the band. After experiencing the turmoil of recording Saturday Night Wrist, the band finally found common ground and were all feeling a stronger bond. So after taking a short time off when the touring concluded, the band began recording what would have been their 6th album, Eros. Before going into the studio, the band took time to write material with the intention to self-produce in late 2007 and early 2008. During this time, they made the collective effort to strengthen their bond even further by revamping their home studio with a bar, where they all played cards and other games together before getting to work for the day, as each member was still dealing with their own personal demons, be it lawsuits, divorces, drugs, etc. And they all used this time to hang out, vent, and just have fun together. After their animosity from working with Bob Ezrin, the band went back to work with longtime producer Terry Date once again, and officially entered the studio in April of 2008. Throughout the year, it got to the point where a significant portion of the album was complete, at around 75%. And Chino even noted that he was about halfway done with his vocal work before all production on the album was halted indefinitely. Some of you may be asking, why was production stopped? But as I'm sure the majority of you already know, tragedy struck, as Chi Cheng was involved in a very serious car accident in November of that year, and was put into an unresponsive coma as a result. The production on Eros notably stopped so the band could put all of their focus on Chi's recovery, and in early 2009, Sergio Vega was brought on as a temporary replacement so that the band could play shows with the intention of using the proceeds for Chi's medical bills. Fieldy from Korn notably also brought together numerous rock and metal musicians to record a song titled A Song for Chi, with all of its proceeds going towards Chi's medical bills as well. DJ Jefe from the Romanian nu metal band Coma also released a compilation CD called From Eastern Europe with Love, featuring numerous bands from that region, with all proceeds going towards Chi's medical bills as well. In July of 2009, the band made a statement that they were going to be shelving Eros indefinitely. And according to the band, this had nothing to do with Chi's situation, but instead, they made this decision from a creative standpoint, as apparently Eros was a very dark album thematically, and with their current situation, they instead wanted to write something much more upbeat and optimistic to cope. Unfortunately, On April 13th of 2013, after making small improvements to his recovery, Chi Chang passed away from sudden heart failure. Sergio would then officially become the permanent bassist for the band for the foreseeable future. Number 9. Eros apparently had 6 songs completed, but as of making this video, the album has still not been released. Chino has mentioned in various interviews that the album will eventually see the light of day, originally hoping that Chi would be back on his feet before the album was released. However, after his passing, it made the possibility of its release that much more of a mystery, further commenting that if the album had been complete, they likely would have released it by now, but because some tracks still needed work and the overall quality wasn't up to par for the band anymore, they weren't really sure what to do with it in terms of potentially completing it. In a 2020 update during an interview with Abe, he mentioned how the band have discussed the possibility of releasing the 6 completed songs as an EP at a later time, but as of 2025, that obviously hasn't come to fruition. As far as the Eros tracks that we know about, 1 year after Chi's death, Chino released the song Smile online, and although it has since been re-uploaded by other people, the original post was deleted due to legal troubles in regards to releasing the song without the label's consent. But luckily, whatever is released on the internet truly never goes away, and Smile can still be heard today. The other 2 Eros songs that we've heard were debuted live back in 2008 before Chi's accident, those being Melanie and Dallas, which you can still watch those performances on YouTube. Apparently, each track on the album was named after a stripper, so other than those 3 we previously mentioned, 2 other song titles have been mentioned in past interviews during the original recording of Eros, those being Destiny and Tempest. Number 10. Following Chi's accident and the halting of Eros, Deftones decided to continue forward and write new music in the meantime. Instead of working with Terry Date again, they decided to bring on Nick Raskulinecz as producer, subsequently taking 2 months to record what would be their official 6th album, Diamond Eyes, which released on May 4th of 2010. The album was originally supposed to be released on April 27th, but due to the album leaking online, they decided to push it back slightly. While recording, the band additionally avoided using Pro Tools on the album, instead choosing to write and record all of the songs as a band by practicing them, quote, a million times till they were perfect, in order to achieve the raw sound they desired. Considering the tragedy all of them were dealing with, they wanted to make this album one that was filled with positivity, and as such, many of the lyrics and themes throughout the album tackle some more optimistic undertones that celebrate the good aspects of life. Diamond Eyes would prove to be a critical success for the band, as it not only produced multiple hit singles reminiscent of the band's roots, but the album ended up selling way above expectations compared to the previous decline in sales. Very recently, on July 3rd of 2025, the album actually hit gold certification, their first and only album since self-titled to reach those figures, a big portion of which is with the rise of vinyl in recent years. Diamond Eyes is now universally recognized as one of Deftones' most important albums, the best charting Deftones album since White Pony, and also one of the defining albums of the 2010s for alternative metal. Number 11. After a successful 2 years of touring for Diamond Eyes, the band knew they wanted to get right back into the studio and make more music instead of taking time off, as during the writing and recording of Diamond Eyes, their producer notably stopped them when he felt they had a full record, instead of letting them continue writing, resulting in Diamond Eyes being their shortest album to date. But even though they were stopped, the band wanted to keep writing, and were eager to get back into the studio throughout their whole tour for Diamond Eyes, as they felt they were riding a creative high that they hadn't experienced in years. Nick Raskulinecz once again came back to produce, and this time around, Sergio was incorporated much more into the actual writing process, allowing him to fully provide his own unique contribution this time around. The band also notably wanted to make the entire album much more dynamic, as they described it, essentially ending up as a mixture of the experimental side of Saturday Night Wrist, the shoegaze of White Pony, and alternative metal sounds found on Diamond Eyes, effectively blending the calm and the storm into a single sound, while lyrically focusing on themes of love, loss, and the complexities of relationships. The result would be the release of their 7th album, Koi no Yokan. which released on November 12th of 2012. Much like Diamond Eyes, Koi no Yokan would once again be another critical success for the band. Not quite reaching the numbers of Diamond Eyes, but as of 2016, it sold 214,000 copies, likely being much more than that as of 2025, once again ranking highly on music charts and being praised by music critics and fans alike. Now in 2025, the majority of Deftones fans consider this album to be one of the band's very best. Number 12. After touring for Koi no Yokan concluded, Chino would take the majority of 2014 to work on his side project Crosses. Meanwhile, the rest of the band began working on new material, and Chino would jump in once his touring with Crosses concluded. This time around, the band brought on another new producer, Matt Hyde, and while the final track list consists of 11 songs, the band apparently wrote a total of 16 while in the studio. While recording Diamond Eyes and Koi no Yokan were noted to be extremely easy for the band as a whole, recording their next album resulted in more issues between Chino and Stefan, as Stefan wanted the songs to go a completely different direction, and found himself having a hard time getting into the feel of the songs they were writing, and had to completely change his mindset to do so. But ultimately, they were able to find common ground and make it work. After a few delays, their 8th album, Gore, would be released on April 8th of 2016. Chino described the album by saying, "The songs have a lot of different moods," and that is certainly very true considering each song is nothing like the last, but it's best compared to their experimental endeavors on Saturday Night Wrist. After their 2 previous albums were highly successful and acclaimed, anticipation for Gore was at an all-time high, and ended up making it the band's best-selling album since Saturday Night Wrist, by selling over 69,000 copies in its first week, additionally making it the highest charting album since Self-Titled back in 2003. That said, while it's still a very solid album, the general consensus is that Gore was a bit of a step back for the band overall, instead of being another leap forward like Koi no Yokan. Number 13. After touring for Gore concluded, Chino announced in 2017 that the band had already begun writing material for the next album, predicting it would be released sometime in 2019. As far as the described sound for the album, Chino expressed that the tracks were considerably heavier than the ones found on Gore. The band finally brought back longtime producer Terry Date after over 15 years, and now, their 9th album, Ohms, was released on September 25th of 2020. Ohms is considered by the band to be a much-needed return to form, as while recording Gore, it's been noted that Stefan was notably pretty checked out during the recording process, as his head wasn't really in it. But with Ohms, the band got closer than they have ever been before, as Chino would get together with Stefan and Abe to just hang out and jam, like they did back when they were just kids. As back then, they could just get on their skateboards and head down the street to jam together, and now they have to fly across the country just to get together at all. But before the writing of their next album, they wanted to re-establish that closeness that they had when they were kids. Not that they didn't want Frank or Sergio involved as well, but since the 3 of them had been the foundation of the band when it was first conceived, they wanted to finally repair the bridge that was somehow lost along the way. And with the addition of Terry Date coming back to produce like he had their earlier records, Ohms was Deftones finally returning to what they once were. That said, while the majority of the recording was done in segments during 2018 and 2019, the band eventually hit a wall with the COVID-19 pandemic in early 2020, which resulted in the album being pushed back, as it was suddenly borderline impossible to get everyone together to finish it up. And when it was finally completed and released in September of 2020, the band was unable to actually tour the album, due to restrictions in place at the time. Regardless, Ohms would end up being positively received from the majority of fans and critics. However, a lot of fans agree that parts of the album weren't as gripping as they were hoping, making it quite divisive. But even so, there is still something for every type of Deftones fan present on the album. Number 14. Now we finally come to the present for the band. As with the departure of Sergio in 2021 due to his contract dispute, and no updates regarding a new member, it was unclear when the next Deftones album would be released, and if they would be recruiting a new bass player at that. But rather than jump into the studio all at once, They decided to write and record their next album in small segments over the course of 3 years, beginning in 2022. After lockdown restrictions lifted following the COVID-19 pandemic, the band were finally able to start touring for Ohms in 2022, a full year and a half after its release, as their tour had been pushed back twice since 2020. And while on tour, fresh off of the closeness they re-established during the writing of Ohms, and with the extensive break from the band they all had during the pandemic, the band was feeling stronger and more creative than ever before, which meant they were already itching to write new music. But instead of sitting down and forcing themselves to write it all at once like they had in the past, they wanted to write it in small spurts, so that it felt less like a job and more like a creatively fulfilling endeavor. To accomplish this, they once again worked with producer Nick Raskulinecz, and over the course of those 3 years, the band would work on writing and recording their 10th album in small segments, although the bulk of the album was apparently written over a 2-week period, resulting in what the band describes as some of their best work, and some of the most fun they've ever had writing music. As such, Deftones' 10th studio album, Private Music, was released on August 22nd of 2025, making it the longest gap between any Deftones album with 5 whole years apart. While it's still unclear if he's an official member of the band, it should be noted that their touring bassist, Fred Sablin, additionally participated on the album. The name Private Music came from the folder that Chino had on his desktop for the songs they were writing for the album, kind of implying that the songs present are almost forbidden or taboo to listen to. I was hoping to have this video out before the album released, but since it's already out, I have to say after listening to it over and over while editing this video, it's pretty phenomenal.
Which is why I'm feeling about a strong 9 to a 10 on this LP.
While it's still too early to say if it'll end up being one of my all-time favorite Deftones albums, I can say with utmost certainty that I like it way more than both Gore and Ohms, and it kinda feels like the true sequel to Koi no Yokan, as a lot of the songs on Private Music would be right at home on that album. So if you're a big Deftones fan like me, I think you're going to love this one. Number 15. While the band has the 10 studio albums we've already mentioned, they've also had a few other releases on the side. The first being the B-Sides and Rarities album, which came out in 2005 like we mentioned earlier, featuring unreleased songs, covers, and alternate versions of existing songs, such as acoustic versions or remixes. Then, in 2011 for Record Store Day, they released an exclusive covers album, containing numerous songs they've covered during their musical careers. Finally, they've also released 3 EPs, 2 of which were featuring live songs, one from 1998, featuring songs from Around the Fur and Adrenaline, and the second one coming out in 2013 as another Record Store Day exclusive, featuring only songs from Adrenaline. The last EP was called Back to School, featuring the title single that came out a year after White Pony in 2001. They've also technically had numerous releases in the form of singles, usually featuring the title single and another song or two, but I'd argue those don't necessarily count as unique releases. Number 16. When it comes to the band's influences, they're obviously very different depending on which member you talk to. As for instance, there's always been the running joke that Chino plays Morrissey to Stefan's Meshuggah, showing that their influences and music taste is very different. But as far as the influences that have been mentioned in various interviews and such, there is of course Morrissey and Meshuggah, Weezer, The Cure, Alice in Chains, Duran Duran, Tool, Faith No More, Depeche Mode, Africa Bambaataa, The Smiths, Hum, Helmet, Jane's Addiction, Pantera, Metallica, Prince, and Bad Brains. Though it should be noted this is only a small portion and the actual list is infinitely bigger than just the groups I've listed. Number 17. As we've briefly touched upon throughout the band's history, the members of Deftones are no strangers to side projects. Chino in particular has a lot. His most well-known is Team Sleep, consisting of now Death Grips drummer Zach Hill, DJ Crook on turntables, Todd Wilkinson on guitar, and Rick Verrett on bass. They released one self-titled album in 2005, and a bunch of demos on their MySpace before that. And other than creating a live album in 2014, the band has remained inactive in recent years, Although, in 2024, they did release a deluxe edition of their self-titled album on vinyl for the first time ever. Not to go on a personal tangent, but their live album, Woodstock Sessions Volume 4, is probably the rarest vinyl I own, simply because I initially purchased it when the band was fundraising for it back in 2014. I would have also purchased a ticket to the actual live show, but I was just a poor kid fresh out of high school at the time, so there was no way I could afford it. Just cool to think I was able to help contribute to one of the only times Team Sleep has actually been active. Other than that, Chino is also involved with the electronic group Crosses, which he helms with longtime friend Sean Lopez, who we've previously mentioned, as he produced Saturday Night Wrist. Alternative metal supergroup Palms, and semi-recently formed supergroup Sawdade. Stefan is involved with two other known projects, being Soul Invicto and Kush, although it's been mentioned he has a lot of side projects that don't see the light of day. Abe had his side project Fallacy, which he originally left Deftones to play with before coming back to record Adrenaline. Otherwise, he's also been a member of both Daycare and Destroy Boys for a short period of time. Frank is also a member of the DJ group Decibel Devils, and previously worked with the hip-hop group Funky Socialistics. Sergio is also a member of the band Quicksand, who were an up-and-coming post-hardcore band that rose up with Deftones in the early 90s, who have since reunited. Now that Sergio is no longer with Deftones, Quicksand is his only band. And finally, their potential current bassist, Fred Sablin, has worked with numerous other bands, such as Marilyn Manson, Crack, Butcher Holler, Marriages, Peter Hook and the Light, Chelsea Wolfe, Goon Moon, 8mm, Kidney Thieves, and he is additionally a current member of Heaven's Blade. Number 18. We briefly mentioned this earlier, but Deftones weren't a big fan of being labeled as a nu metal band. Adrenaline inadvertently got them roped into the genre, and although they took steps to distance themselves from that label with Around the Fur, it wouldn't be until White Pony that Deftones truly distanced themselves from the nu metal genre, as when first going into production for that album, the band more or less came in not knowing what they were going to do, but rather what they weren't going to do, which was make anything that could even resemble nu metal. Regarding this, Chino stated in interviews that, "I wanted to go left, not because I felt we were better than these bands. Rather, I wanted our band to stand on our own 2 feet. Nu metal was at its peak. It's in the name. Nu metal. It's going to be old in time. Eventually, it did die. My whole idea was when that ship goes down, I don't want to be on that motherfucker." We tried to distance ourselves as much as we could, and the best way to do that was by following the path we were on. And considering White Pony became the quintessential Deftones album to define them, and every album after that would only further change the band's sound, it's safe to say they succeeded in jumping off that sinking ship. Number 19. Another nu metal struggle the band endured was pressure from their label regarding the tracks on White Pony. After releasing Change in the House of Flies as a single and seeing some success, their label Maverick was eager to release another single immediately. The only problem was that the label believed White Pony didn't have any other songs on it that were considered single material. In fact, they were comparing the band to other groups, like Linkin Park and Papa Roach, who had apparently sold millions more records than they had, basically trying to push the band to make more rap rock nu metal songs when they clearly wanted to distance themselves from it. The label particularly wanted them to rework the chorus of Pink Maggot into a 3-minute song, because they really thought it had mainstream potential. So although Chino in particular was very against it and initially refused, after the label kept pestering him, he decided to show them how easy it would be to write a basic popular single. So the band made the track Back to School in a very short span of time. And the label was so happy they got what they perceived was another hit single that they completely reissued White Pony with Back to School now included on the track list, essentially tainting the intended original experience of the album forever. The band has since reflected on this decision to give in to the label's wishes, and have stated that it negatively affected their future dealings with that label, which is why they would eventually leave Maverick and sign on to Reprise Records instead. Technically, Back to School wouldn't be the only new addition to White Pony, as 2 limited international releases of the album, one with a red case and one with a black case, feature a bonus track called The Boys Republic at the end of the album. These variations were limited to 50,000 copies each. Additionally, when it comes to the music video for Back to School, apparently the band played a mini show for the students present in the video, as thanks for their participation. It's been confirmed that they played both Change and Elite at the very least. Number 20. For the 20th anniversary of White Pony, the band decided to re-release the album on December 11th of 2020, notably removing Back to School from the track list, to which Chino commented, "With the reissue, we're going with the original version, as we intended it to be." But in addition to the re-release, they also packaged it with an additional release amply titled Black Stallion, which is an entire remix album of White Pony, featuring different prominent electronic producers on each song. As at the time of initially writing White Pony, producers like DJ Shadow and Uncle were a huge influence on the album as a whole, to the point where before White Pony was even conceived, Chino and Frank cornered DJ Shadow at one of his shows and asked him to do a remix album of their next album, which would have been White Pony, to which DJ Shadow declined. But now, 20 years later for Black Stallion, artists like DJ Shadow, Clams Casino, and Mike Shinoda, among many others, got the opportunity to bring that remix album to life. Number 21. When it came to Adrenaline and Around the Fur, Chino has explained that lyrically, he wrote mostly about himself, his feelings, people he's interacted with, or various experiences throughout his own life. So when it came to White Pony, he decided to do something different and not write about himself at all, instead looking to write about completely fictional situations, or just overall capture the feeling of fantasy when it came to each song, which he claims doing that for White Pony has done wonders for his songwriting ability, and was overall a very freeing experience. Additionally, the only song present on White Pony that does feature personal meaning from Chino would be RX Queen, as he's been quoted saying, "It's about my wife, don't ask." Another song Chino has written about his wife is the song Mascara from Around the Fur, which he claims is his favorite song on that album. Number 22. Chino is a huge fan of beer, and through this passion, he partnered with Belching Beaver Brewery to create multiple different unique Deftones-themed IPAs. The idea initially came to him after he tried Iron Maiden's signature beer, and figured that he could do better. So after asking around to a couple different breweries, he made the deal with Belching Beaver, because they actually wanted him to help create the flavors he envisioned, and took him with through the entire process. Through this collaboration, there have been 11 Deftones IPAs so far, starting off with Phantom Bride in 2016, followed by Swerve City, Good Morning Beautiful, Digital Bath, Dia de los Deftones, White Pony, Ohms, Ceremony, Lucky You, Beauty School, and most recently, Bored. When it comes to Belching Beaver's logo, the only requirement for the designs is that some sort of beaver must be incorporated into the art. So Chino also brought on Frank Maddox, who's been doing the band's artwork since White Pony, to create unique Deftones designs with the beaver. Although with most of the later releases, the beaver logo was no longer incorporated into the actual design. In addition to that, Deftones have also had 2 collaborations with Abre Ojos to create a White Pony themed tequila to celebrate the 20th anniversary of the album, of which only 2,880 bottles were produced, while the second collaboration was created to celebrate the release of Ohms. And finally, in addition to that, Deftones very recently had a collaboration with Drinksip called Tone Zero Lager, which also comes in a non-alcoholic version. Tacking this onto the video at the very last minute, but on September 26th, Deftones announced a collaboration with Metric Coffee, amply titled Infinite Source. It appears to be limited to only 800 units, so likely by the time this video releases, it will already be sold out. But on the off chance it's still available or they restock, you can find it on Deftones' official website. Number 23. As far as how Deftones got their first record deal, they took a trip down to Los Angeles to play a show closing for some other band, and were practically playing to an empty room. But regardless of the amount of people present, they decided to play like they would any other show. One of the few people in the remaining crowd was apparently a label executive who was present to view the previous band, notably being an executive working for Madonna, as she had just recently opened up her own record label, Maverick. So that executive managed to somehow get a hold of Deftones' 2-song demo tape and showed it to Madonna. And then, the very next day while at work, Chino got a call to come back to Los Angeles to play their songs for that label. So the band drove down and played 2 songs. While getting ready to start their 3rd one, Madonna's managers told them to stop playing, as they wanted to sign them on the spot. So that's exactly what they did, and they actually got to meet Madonna in the process, which they all claim was a really cool and surreal experience, being that all of them were so young at the time. So basically, we owe Madonna for Deftones reaching mainstream popularity. Thanks, Madonna. Very cool. Additionally, before signing to Maverick, Deftones were also in talks with Roadrunner Records about a potential record deal in 1993, with one of the stipulations being that they changed their name, which the band was apparently okay with doing, even considering changing their name to Engine Number 9, which was a song on one of their demos at the time and would later feature on their debut album. However, this deal would obviously end up falling through, because Roadrunner wanted them to sign away their publishing and merchandising rights, which they declined to do. And 6 months later, they would end up signing to Maverick, and the rest is history. Although, apparently Maverick also wanted them to change their name initially, but they didn't like any of the potential names they came up with. So in the end, they stuck with Deftones. Number 24. Deftones are one of the many bands that have seen a massive spike or resurgence in popularity thanks to TikTok, as an entire new generation of fans have been introduced to the band's music through the app in one way or another, as they've had multiple songs go viral on the platform, like their cover of Please 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 Let Me Get What I Want, Cherry Waves, My Own Summer, and more, resulting in tens of millions more monthly listeners on streaming services. Which truly shows you how much Deftones are a band that resonates with all ages, as their shows are now filled with these fans, both new and old. They've also been noticing this influx of fans of all ages all the way back during the White Pony era.
There's a whole new generation of kids these days, that are young. I mean, people that come to our shows are like, it's everyone from 30s to some young people, like, goddamn.
With the 3rd record, the fans have grown with us too, and they've been very receptive to our direction, and it's just awesome, that they're able to grow with us, and it goes back and forth. So they're very special, though. Just they're why we do what we do.
Which is honestly really crazy to me, because when I was in high school back in 2010, and Deftones quickly became my favorite band after I discovered Diamond Eyes and went down the rabbit hole of their whole discography, I didn't know anyone else who liked Deftones, and barely knew anyone who even knew who they were. So now that they're so popular, it really warms my heart to see so many people loving their music like I do. And while they've always been a big band in their own right, it's just great to see them reaching even higher levels of success this late into their careers. Number 25. Beginning in 2018, Deftones have began an annual festival called Dia de los Deftones, where Deftones headline the show with numerous opening acts, each year getting even bigger and bolder. Aside from 2020 and 2021, where basically no concerts were taking place because of COVID. These shows are most notable because not only is it a festival created to celebrate Deftones themselves, but each year the band plays a couple deep cuts that they either rarely play or are debuting live for the very first time, an event that all hardcore Deftones fans truly can't miss. With that said, 2025's Dia de los Deftones was announced on July 22nd, and will be taking place on November 1st in San Diego, California, featuring artists like Clips, Death Heaven, Gore, and many more. So get your tickets while you still can. Number 26. To reveal the release of their album Ohms in 2020, the band sent out coordinates on social media that led to a billboard featuring the album art and release date. In addition to that, the album art for Ohms is made up of a total of 12,995 dots, where the band additionally ran a campaign amply titled Adopt a Dot, where fans could essentially purchase one of these dots present on the album art that would be represented with a photo of themselves, with an entire collage of everyone who adopted a dot being present online, and all proceeds going towards both the UC Davis Children's Hospital and Crew Nation Relief Fund. Unfortunately, the website featuring the Adopt a Dot page has been discontinued in recent times. Number 27. When it comes to the songwriting process for Deftones, the music or instrumentals are always written first, while the lyrics are always written after that. According to Chino, the very last thing he does in regards to writing the songs is giving them a title. Number 28. Believe it or not, Deftones proved their influence on the early 2000s mainstream by winning a Grammy. For the 43rd Grammy Awards in 2001, they won a Grammy for Best Metal Performance for their song Elite, beating out Slipknot, Pantera, Iron Maiden, and Marilyn Manson. Funny enough, Chino didn't attend the ceremony because he didn't think they were going to win. Number 29. Normally after the recording sessions for each album, the band records a few cover songs to just have some fun before leaving the studio, many of which can be found on the Covers compilation, B-Sides and Rarities, Deluxe Editions, and so on. However, when it came to Koi no Yokan, that tradition was officially broken, as unfortunately, they ran out of studio time just recording the songs they needed for the album. They initially wanted to find some small studio while on tour and record a few covers to keep that tradition alive, but were apparently unable to do so. Number 30. When it comes to the song Head Up, there's a bit of an interesting but sad story behind its conception. The song was notably co-written by Max Cavalera, former member of Sepultura. The song itself is dedicated to Max's stepson, Dana, who was killed in a car accident. Chino also happened to be a good friend of Dana's, which is how this collaboration came to be. Apparently in the studio, emotions between the two of them were very intense, angry, and emotional. And according to Max, it felt as if Dana was in between the two of them the entire session. Another interesting fact about Head Up would be that Max screams the word Soulfly throughout the song. Not too long after the release of Around the Fur, Max would start a new band called Soulfly, as he was inspired by Head Up's lyrics, and felt it would be perfect for the name of the band. With that said, Max and Chino collaborated again on Soulfly's first and second album, on the songs First Commandment, and a similarly themed song to Head Up, titled Pain. Additionally, when Around the Fur was eventually added to Spotify's streaming service, Head Up is a full minute longer than on the original album. Number 31. The working title for the song Feiticeira was originally New Murderer, in reference to some of the lyrics within the song, though the actual title itself is a Brazilian name that Chino read in a magazine and just liked how it sounded. The song itself is about being taken captive. Number 32. The writing for Ohms officially began in 2017, when Stefan sent Chino the guitar riff for the title track, which Chino instantly fell in love with because of the desperate feeling it gave off. So when the band eventually went into the studio to record, he pulled out the recording of that riff and told the rest of the band that they should do something with it, which is where the song soon came together for everyone. Lyrically, Chino took that initial feeling of desperation to let the meaning kind of write itself, where it formed into a commentary of the current state of the environment and the planet, but at the same time making it sort of a closing statement for the album, about how no matter how much is falling apart around us, we're all in this together, and our bonds will remain even after everything is turned to dust. Number 33. The very first night Chi met with the band to potentially be their bass player, once they all started jamming, everyone instantly meshed so well together that they even started writing a song together on the spot, which would become the song Some People, which would end up on some of the band's earliest demos. Number 34. When it comes to the title for the song Rats, 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 apparently its inspiration was from a story Chino was reading about the actress Frances Farmer, and although he didn't realize it at the time, he later figured out that Nirvana also wrote a song about Frances Farmer, that being their song Frances Farmer Will Have Her Revenge on Seattle. It's a very interesting but sad story if you choose to look into it further. Number 35. The recording of the music video for Minerva was apparently an awful experience, as it was filmed near the Salton Sea in California during a sandstorm, to which Abe and Chi would further comment on the story behind it. It sucked. The video could have been so awesome, but they weren't able to edit it because the sand got in all the time codes and all the DATs. We had these moons that are way off in the distance, these huge spheres of light that got smashed when the winds came in. It turned into a sandstorm. It was a 22-hour shoot, and we were there the whole time. We were out there for almost 24 hours. It was ridiculous. We got out there very early in the morning, and the wind blew sand in just about every orifice you can imagine. But it was a trippy video. I actually like it a lot. The director of the music video, Paul Fedor, would additionally comment that the entire shoot was notably the worst conditions he's ever filmed in. So it's a miracle they were able to finish the video at all. Number 36. The very first show the band ever played was at a local barbecue. And at that time, they didn't even have a name yet. So the task of naming the band fell on Stefan after the fact. But he was having a lot of trouble doing so, as he wanted to pick a name that sounded cool. At that time, Stefan worked at a pizza place, rolling pizza dough, and was able to sit in the back with headphones on, listening to music of all varieties. To which he found inspiration from classic music from the 50s, as there were numerous groups from that time period that had the tones in their names. Additionally, as a big fan of rap, he thought of the popular record label Def Jam, thinking he could find a way to mix both the old and the new by putting them together to create Deftones.
Where did the name come from? Why are you called the Deftones? Now we all were ready for an answer. Who wants to field that question?
Well, one day I was at the park and I was eating a taco, and John came up to me.
What happened was one day I was home and Steph was at my house, dude. And this is true. I'm sorry. And I rubbed his gut and and it just came to me. It just Deftones and it sounded good.
No, that's not even it. I swear, I was the person that came up with the name. I mean, even though I'm a relatively new member and everything. I mean, I came up with the name. I gave it to Stefan. Like,
no.
Like
Deftones is a Chinese name.
Number 37. When Chi and Stefan were asked to label the general personality traits of each member of the band, they said Chino is highly emotional, Abe is indecisive, Frank is both mellow and a digital sound master, Chi is either level-headed or completely insane, and Stefan has the answer to every question. No wonder he thinks the world is flat. This just in. Guitarist of Deftones, Stephen Carpenter, has announced on social media that the band is renaming their hit single, Hole in the Earth, as it will now apparently be called Hole in the Flat Earth. More on that at 7. Number 38. When it comes to adrenaline, Chino isn't too proud of how it turned out, like we mentioned earlier, regardless of the eventual success it garnered them. He not only felt the album was recorded way too fast, but he specifically noted in an interview that the naivety of the band resulted in some subpar results, and it's therefore not one of the band's best records, and if it wasn't for the fans who adore the record, he would probably dislike it a lot more. Whereas once they were ready to record Around the Fur, the previous recording experience inspired him to try and create something truly special and different, which he believes they were able to achieve. To further expand on that, when it came to a lot of experimentation with Around the Fur, this shift in style and approach could be seen through every member of the band in some fashion. One of the more interesting aspects brought to light would be that Abe used a different snare head on every single song for the record. He used the same kit and cymbals for each song, but he wanted to find that perfect snare for the future, which it looks like he achieved through this experimentation. As in a future interview he stated, "I think I've sort of refined what I want in a snare now. I always liked getting a nice crack, but the older I'm getting, the more I'm getting into that fatter sound. I'm always adjusting my snare tension just to try to blend that crack with the fat sound." Number 39. Since I talk a lot about anime on this channel, you should like and subscribe by the way, I figured it's only appropriate to point out that Deftones have also been featured in one of the most prominent anime of all time, Dragon Ball Z. As within the Funimation dub of the movie, Dragon Ball Z Lord Slug, the Deftones song Elite was featured in one of the scenes where Lord Slug is first revealed. And if that wasn't enough, in the Funimation dub of the movie Dragon Ball Z Cooler's Revenge, the Deftones song Change in the House of Flies was featured in one of the scenes where Goku transforms into a Super Saiyan. Somebody in the Funimation dub department must have really been into Deftones at that time, and I'm all for it. Now, in recent times, with a Limp Bizkit song being featured as the opening for the new Devil May Cry anime, maybe it's only a matter of time before we get the Deftones anime opening too. Allegedly, after the band covered the song Sinatra by Helmet, Page Hamilton from Helmet expressed that they weren't going to play that song anymore, because apparently whenever a band covers one of their songs, they retire it. While this statement has only ever been rumored, Page Hamilton did go on record to say this about the Deftones cover. So apparently the Deftones covered this song. I never heard it. I'm sure it's not as good as our version, but I'm thankful to them for covering it. It's good. I'm sure they f***ed up the chords. There's no way they figured out the chords. I'd tell them that. With that comment, it should be noted that Helmet played Sinatra while on tour in 2014, so it looks like that rumor can finally be put to rest. Number 41. The origin of the song name Kim Dracula is actually very anticlimactic. Basically, during the recording of Saturday Night Wrist, Kim Dracula was part of Chino's personal email. He's also mentioned that one of the addresses featured in Street Carp wasn't a physical address, but rather one of his email addresses back in the day. Number 42. When asked what album he'd wished he made himself, Chino stated he wished he'd written Weezer's Blue Album. As we mentioned earlier, Weezer is a huge influence for the band, especially early on. And Chino further elaborated that it's not only one of his favorite albums of all time, but the band used to play the entire thing during a lot of their sound checks back in the day. You can also see various live performances of the band covering Weezer songs on YouTube. Number 43. When it comes to the conception of the song Knife Party, apparently the inspiration came from a very weird moment on the band's tour bus. As you see, Abe has a collection of various knives, and gave one to everybody who was on board the tour bus at that time. So everybody was just kind of dancing around with knives, vibing out, and Chino thought the entire event was such a surreal and ridiculous moment that he thought up an idea for an imaginary society. Quoted saying, "I made up this fake scenario of some kind of underworld society of knives, people who just get off on these erotic fantasies." When it came to Rodleen Getzik's guest appearance on Knife Party, she apparently went to check out her friend's recordings for their solo album, and in the process of being at that studio, someone popped in one of her live performances on the speakers, which Chino overheard while the band was taking a break. In that moment, he was so moved by the unique vocals that he had to figure out who was singing, only to find that Rodleen herself was still present in the studio. So Chino pulled her aside and said, "Hey, will you sing on our record?" To which she said she would, but only if the music hits her soul. After hearing only a little bit of Knife Party, she told them, "Stop it. Let's press record. Let's go." And within only a few takes, they had her part down in no time at all. When Rodleen first heard that their band name was Deftones, she also thought they were going to be a ska or reggae band, which isn't exactly untrue considering their old material. Additionally, the record label allegedly wanted Knife Party to be the first single off of White Pony, but Chino thought it wouldn't be a good idea for a single because of all the violent and sexual imagery within the song. Number 44. Chino considers Minerva to be one of the most important turning points for the band at large, basically proving that not only could they write whatever they want and be commercially successful, but also that Minerva marked the band essentially growing up, unlike their contemporaries. Saying, "Pretty much since Adrenaline, we'd been fighting an uphill battle with some of our old school fans, who just love us for the aggressive part of our band. As much as I like it too, I've had this conversation many times. I'm not always there. I'm not always mad. Life doesn't always suck. And I got in a lot of trouble for calling out other bands at the time for not really evolving, but still writing songs about how it sucks to be a kid. For one, I'm not a kid. Second of all, I'm not upset. I'm actually enjoying making music."
And I was wondering why your latest album, White Pony,
is so mellow compared to your other CDs, like Around the Fur and Adrenaline.
Oh my god, bro. Oh, hell no, man. What the fuck, man?
Number 45. One of the more obscure Deftones tracks would be the song Can't Even Breathe, which was released in between Adrenaline and Around the Fur in 1996. It was notably included on the soundtrack for the film Escape from LA, but aside from being released on that film's soundtrack, Can't Even Breathe was only ever released on the limited cassette sampler, My Own Summer, which only featured the 2 tracks. While being one of the deeper cuts in their discography, it's also one of the most unique, as it's almost like the perfect bridge between Adrenaline and Around the Fur, as you can still very clearly hear the band's aggressive Adrenaline sound, but in a way that perfectly transitions to the sound they would bring forth on Around the Fur. so it's almost like you can hear the beginning of Around the Fur's sound commencing on that track, and it would be right at home on that album too. But sadly, it would never make it onto Around the Fur's track list, and hasn't been released in any capacity since. Number 46. The song MX was originally supposed to be a completely different song lyrically, as Chino explained it like this during an interview. I didn't really like MX that much, and I had completely different vocals than I had written in the practice place when we were writing it. When I was recording the vocals in the control room, and I started to say to myself, this is boring. Throw this song away or stop rolling the tape. And I just wrote a whole new song over the actual music. New melodies, new whole idea. It was just something that I was feeling at the moment. And then, Abe's wife was there in the studio and I was thinking, there are these parts that I'd really like a girl's voice on. So I asked her if she'd do it. She was like, I don't want to do this. And I talked her into it. After it was all done, I had a completely different song. Right then, it became one of my favorite songs, because it was something I completely changed around myself. It could have been just a normal, kind of boring song, but it ended up being one of my favorite songs in about an hour, with me just realizing that I can completely do whatever I want that completely changes it. So that was cool. Footage of a rehearsal of MX with the original lyrics is available on YouTube, but good luck deciphering what the original lyrics were.
Hamburger.
Number 47. The song Tempest has an unreleased music video, as Abe revealed in an interview that they paid for one to be made, and it was completed, but for one reason or another, it never ended up being released. It's still unknown if that video will ever see the light of day. Number 48. On the song Rapture, Stefan has described the writing process as wanting to illustrate pure chaos as much as possible, which he feels they were able to achieve on that song. Also listing his inspiration for that song from the band, Drive Like Jihu. Number 49. When it comes to the album name, Koi no Yokan, it's a Japanese phrase that roughly translates to premonition of love, which more or less describes the feeling of when you first meet someone, and you know deep down that you're going to end up falling in love with them. Though this is notably different from love at first sight, being that the feeling of love doesn't happen right off the bat, but you can still see it's going to end up happening in that initial moment. Number 50. We established earlier that skateboarding was the pastime of the founding Deftones members, and during the recording sessions of White Pony, one of the things that kept them so distracted was none other than Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, as allegedly the band members were so addicted to that game that they would play all hours into the night, to the point where Terry Date had to come out and grab them every few hours to get back in the studio and get to work. Number 51. In addition to the last fact, a lot of Deftones members are avid gamers, mainly Stefan and Sergio, but the rest of them still partake here and there at the very least. Back in 2010, they both mentioned how Modern Warfare and FIFA were their new favorites, also chiming in how games like Guitar Hero were great, in terms of getting new generations into older songs that nobody talks about anymore. Also mentioning how the game is fun to play even if they suck at it. Another interesting gaming fact about the band would be that Stefan was at one point the #1 ranked online player for Tiger Woods' PGA Tour 2005, to the point where he would be playing it constantly, be it on tour, in the studio, or just in his free time. He has since put down golfing games for good.
Number 52.
When it came to the album name White Pony, the band had actually already decided on that name before even going into the studio. Not only as a way to express their individuality compared to other bands at the time, but also just because they found the pony graphic itself on some clip art site, and knew they had to go with it as the symbol. Additionally, White Pony is also a reference to a song called White Horse by the group Laid Back, where it has the line, "If you want to ride, ride the white pony," which is a reference to doing a bunch of cocaine. Number 53. The song Crenshaw Punch was the last song they recorded during the sessions for Around the Fur. According to Abe, the song title comes from a time they were on tour. After a long and strange night, they pulled over to some random liquor store on Crenshaw Boulevard and decided to just get a ton of cheap wine that they ended up calling Crenshaw Punch.
This is where we sleep. These are our bunks. Curtains close and open and close. Basically like miniature coffins. We're preparing ourselves for death here. These are, this is my bunk right now. As you see, it's kind of messy. I got snot rags in here. Actually, these aren't mine. We got I always carry my lunch wherever I go, so I make sure I bring my Star Wars lunch pail.
Number 54. In addition to the last fact, while it wasn't the last song they recorded, My Own Summer was one of the last tracks the band wrote during the studio sessions of Around the Fur. According to Chino, almost all of the songs were at least in their beta stages before going into the studio, but My Own Summer came together at the last minute. He also went on to say that he heard Stefan just making up the riff and had to run up and check it out because it sounded so cool. And just as he did, Chi was also there coming up with the bass line. And next thing he knew, within 45 minutes, My Own Summer was basically ready to be recorded.
The whole mood of the song might be very, very like intense in your face, and then all of a sudden it'll just back away and be very vulnerable. And I think that's what kind of makes the music dynamic in a way.
It's our personalities that make it dynamic.
That too. See, like him, he's stupid. And me, I'm smart. That's dynamics.
I'm the smartest.
Number 55. Chino has been featured in many different songs and projects over the years. But one interesting tidbit of information comes from the song Bender by Sevendust. At this point, it's well known that Chino provided guest vocals on that song. However, in the credits for that song, it lists Pony 1 as additional vocals. Apparently, this was part intentional, part mistake, as Chino wanted his credits to be listed as Pony Wong, as Wong is his middle name. However, somehow Wong was misinterpreted as one, and that's what it ended up being listed as in the credits. Number 56. The song Teenager was originally supposed to be a song meant for Team Sleep, as DJ Crook, a member of Team Sleep and friend of Frank Delgado, added a lot of beats and turntables for that song, but somehow it ended up being included on White Pony instead. But it's never been explicitly mentioned by the members of the band how this came to be. Additionally, Teenager is one of the first songs Chino ever wrote, as he wrote the lyrics when he was only 15 years old, after getting his heart broken for the very first time. Number 57. Stefan originally used your standard 6-string guitar while recording the band's first 2 albums, but after being influenced by bands like Meshuggah, he switched over to a 7-string from White Pony onward. That is, until Diamond Eyes onward, when he upgraded to an 8-string guitar. And with the release of Ohms, he started using a 9-string guitar for the first time. Number 58. In an interview with the band after the initial release of Saturday Night Wrist, they were asked about a second music video to follow Hole in the Earth's, which just released. Chino then mentioned how the next video was likely going to be for Cherry Waves.
You know, I think we're going to try, we're getting ready to film another video for the second single on our record, which I think is going to be Cherry Waves, tentatively.
What?
Yes.
Hold up. You sell out.
However, as it turned out, that never ended up happening, because the label decided to make the song Mine the next single instead of Cherry Waves, and therefore Mine ended up with a music video instead. It's kind of ironic to think that Cherry Waves would end up becoming way more popular of a song than Mine ever was after it went viral on TikTok. I guess Cherry Waves should have been the next single after all. Number 59. The meaning of Cherry Waves was described by Chino as being about testing the trust of another person, which can be illustrated in the lyrics through lines such as, "And the waves suck you in, and you drown. If like you should sink down beneath, I'll swim down. Would you?" While never explicitly stated by the band, the song could either be about the lack of trust within the band during the recording of Saturday Night Wrist, or it could be about a crumbling relationship. Number 60. Once Sergio first filled in for Chi after his accident, the band didn't have any plans to start writing a new record. However, after a small jam session with Sergio, the band ended up writing what would become the song Royal. Then after that, they knew they were going to start writing a new album from then onward.
Number 61.
While remaining uncredited, Scott Weiland made an appearance on the song RX Queen, doing backing vocals. It's not immediately noticeable, but if you listen with the intention of finding Scott's vocals, you can definitely notice them. Apparently the reason why Scott ended up singing on the record in the first place was because he was on probation for heroin possession, and his management wanted to keep him out of jail by giving him something to do, instead of doing, well, heroin. Number 62. The song Tempest is about how the world was supposed to end back in 2012, as the track itself was released before the album on October 9th of 2012. Obviously, the world didn't end, but with how god-awful everything has become since then, I think maybe 2012 just marked the beginning of the end. Number 63. While Adrenaline was produced by Terry Date, the hidden track on the album, Fist, was actually produced by Ross Robinson. Number 64. Jerry Cantrell from Alice in Chains made a guest guitar appearance in the song Phantom Bride. As we mentioned earlier, Deftones have been majorly influenced by Alice in Chains, but in addition to that, the two groups have been friends for a long time. So while writing the songs on Gore, Chino noticed a small section of Phantom Bride could use some sort of guitar solo or other guitar segment, so he knew he wanted to fill it with something special, as the band doesn't usually partake in solos or anything like that, so it was a rare occurrence. Chino sent Jerry a live recording of the song, and once Jerry sent back his part, the band loved it so much that they had Jerry come into the studio right away to record it. Chino would go on to say about the experience, "It's like you're hearing a Deftones song, but all of a sudden, a bit of Alice in Chains seeps in. As a fan, I was just sitting back and a little tear came out of my eye." Number 65. When it comes to the song Up Up, Down Down, Left Right, A B Select Start, not only is the name a reference to the Konami code, but Stefan actually wrote and recorded the drums for this song, while Chino took over all the guitar work. This and Pink Cell Phone are also the only songs from Saturday Night Wrist that have never been played live. Number 66. Similar to the previous fact, Stefan also wrote the drums for the song Anniversary of an Uninteresting Event. And according to Chino, this is how the song initially came together. There was a piano in the studio where we recorded the record, and it was just there. And every day I walked by, I kinda fiddled with it, and I kinda came up with this melody idea and this vocal line. And then Stefan came in and played the drum part, and it's just kinda like a simple beat, but we just recorded like really ambient, and just added guitars and a little tiny bit of a mod in it, and it just turned out to work. In an interview with Chino in 2017, he also mentioned that Anniversary of an Uninteresting Event is one of the songs he's most proud of creating. Number 67. Now to one last time connect the last fact to this one, the reason as to why Stefan was recording the drums for the songs we mentioned is because back before Deftones even existed, Stefan was a drummer. This was mostly because all of his friends at the time played guitar, and he obviously wanted to play with them, so he chose a different instrument, being the drums. However, he was eventually involved in a bad car accident, and couldn't practice drums for a while due to a broken leg. So while he was recovering, he borrowed one of his friend's guitars and started learning how to play. And after that, he was a guitarist for life. Though as we can see by the last few facts, he still likes to go back and jam on the drums from time to time. Number 68. Contrary to popular belief, the album name Around the Fur isn't actually meant to be sexual like it sounds. Instead, according to Chino, the meaning is meant to allude to the band's sound. Our music, I picture it as being, you know, very ugly with heavy chords. Everything's really abrasive, and at the same time, it's really soothing. And I think I picture fur as being very glamorous and very beautiful. But around the inside, it's skin, and it's ugly. So it's somewhat of a metaphor for the music, and the way I feel sometimes about people being really pretty on the outside and ugly on the inside. Number 69. The cover of Saturday Night Wrist is actually a collage of still shots taken from the 1970 adult film Roxanna, starring Louise Thompson as the titular character and the woman featured on the cover of the album. In addition to that, Frank Maddox has multiple other concepts for Saturday Night Wrist's cover featured on his website, which also include still shots from Roxanna. Number 70. After the touring cycle for Adrenaline, the band reconvened toward the end of 1996 to begin working on their next album. However, one thing to note about this time period would be that Chi almost decided to leave the band. He was pretty fed up and exhausted from all the touring and thought he would be better off as an English teacher, as he was studying English at Sacramento State when he first joined the band. Although, after some further convincing from the rest of the band, he decided to stay on board. Because of this dilemma, during the first month of writing songs for Around the Fur, Chi was not present. In fact, no bass player was. so a lot of the early songs were written completely without bass. One example of a song they wrote without chi being the song Die of the Flu. Number 71. Shortly before the COVID-19 pandemic, Stefan developed an immense fear of traveling, and with all the subsequent travel lockdowns that occurred with the pandemic, that fear only grew, as he already had extreme anxiety with flying on airplanes in general, to the point where he would attempt to fall asleep before takeoff just to avoid the anxiety of the flight itself. But with the idea that certain countries could just decide on a whim to go into lockdown and prevent any outside travel, he developed the fear of getting stuck away from home. So because of that, when the pandemic was essentially over by 2022, and most travel bans were lifted, Stefan decided he is no longer going to tour internationally with Deftones at all. Although it's obviously a bummer for him and for fans, he ultimately wants people to understand that this is simply the only way to avoid the massive anxiety that comes with travel, with the rest of the band having his back on that decision. Lance Jackman and Sean Lopez are currently his international live fill-ins when he is not performing domestically. Number 72. There's a live acoustic version of Be Quiet and Drive that was recorded specifically for the movie Little Nicky. This version of the song additionally features members of Incubus and POD, and of course the star of Little Nicky, Adam Sandler, to support the film. Contrary to popular belief, this is not the version found on B-Sides and Rarities. As far as the movie's actual soundtrack, the version found on B-Sides and Rarities is featured there instead of the recording with Adam Sandler, in addition to Change being included on the soundtrack as well. Number 73. While both Chi and Sergio are great bass players, one adjustment the members of the band had to make between the two when Sergio first joined the band was that Chi used to play bass with his fingers, while Sergio exclusively uses a pick. For those of you who don't know why that's an issue, it's mainly because finger picking versus using an actual pick on bass creates a slightly different sound. On that note, Fred Seblin also uses a pick. Number 74. Before the release of the self-titled album, a tracklist was leaked twice, which had some really odd working song titles, many of which fans believe were just jokes in case of a leak. In the two separate leaks, Needles and Pins was originally called White Women, followed by Aria. Suckas and the DVD song were the original names of Hexagram. The Late Great Planet Earth and then Red-Faced were the original names of Minerva. You Hate Fun was the original name for Battle Axe. Cracker was the original name for Bloody Cape. And finally, was the original name for When Girls Telephone Boys. That said, the actual explanation for the original song titles is namely just because Chino decides the final song titles at the very last minute of every album, which even includes their latest album, Private Music. As during an interview with Zane Lowe about Private Music, Chino revealed that the first single, My Mind is a Mountain, was originally called The Boot. Another undisclosed song was originally going to be called Glove. Metal Dream was originally called Eating Metal in Your Dreams. Departing the Body was originally called Skirt. I Think About You All the Time was originally called Arm. And finally, Infinite Source was originally called I, which was additionally the first song they wrote for the record. In a similar vein, in 2024, an early mix of Around the Fur was uploaded to the Internet Archive from a tape discovered from that time period, where you can not only hear slight variations in the tracks compared to their final mix, but it additionally revealed the working titles for some of the songs. A few examples being Mascara was originally called Lulu, MX was originally called Max, and Rickets was originally called Kickets. This early mix additionally contained the B-sides Crenshaw Punch, The Chauffeur, and To Have and To Hold. Number 75. Like we mentioned earlier, when it came to the recording process of Gore, apparently some tension began to rise between Chino and Stefan once again, as Stefan had trouble getting into the feel of that album due to creative differences. As for instance, when it came to the song Heart's Wires, he stated, I had to embrace my inner psycho rhythmist and come up with a part and get into it. Basically comparing the feeling of that song to being a serial killer, which really rubbed him the wrong way. Creative differences aside, the rest of the band insists that the collaborative process of the band has never been stronger while recording that album, and this difference in styles is one of their biggest strengths. Number 76. After Chino came back from his tour with Team Sleep during the dark days of Saturday Night Wrist, Beware was the first song the band wrote together upon his return. According to him, the song lyrics are a warning against the temptation of women, drugs, alcohol, or any other vice. Additionally, the song was originally going to be titled Beware the Water, but was shortened to just Beware upon release of the album. Number 77. Before working with Frank Maddox for the majority of their album artwork, starting with White Pony, the band apparently had no particular reason for picking the album art featured on Around the Fur. There was just a party going on the night before that the band participated in, and once they were going through all the photos the next day, they saw the photo of the girl in the hot tub, and all unanimously decided that it had to be the album artwork. The only real reason being that they felt it stood out and captured the true feeling of that time period for the band. So they tracked down the girl in the photo, got her permission, and that was that. Apparently in the original photo, Frank was sitting next to the girl in the hot tub, but they decided to Photoshop him out. Number 78. For Stefan, the one piece of gear that has survived the band's entire career is his continued use of the Tortex guitar pick, as he's been using it since he first picked up the guitar, and he claims that everything about it just feels perfect, so there was never any need to change it up. Number 79. The song LMIRL is an acronym that stands for Let's Meet in Real Life. Number 80. If Deftones wouldn't have worked out, Chino assumes he probably would have tried to pursue some sort of career in film or photography, or find some other job related to music, like working in a record store or producing. Number 81. The lyrics to Hole in the Earth are about the difficult experience the band had writing Saturday Night Wrist, along with all the other hardships that contributed to the turmoil of that time period. According to Chino, he also didn't inform the other members of that song's meaning until after the album was complete, as to not create further tension. Number 82. In addition to being the bassist for the band, Chi was also a very spiritual person with a passion for poetry. Through that passion, he released one spoken word album in the year 2000, called The Bamboo Parachute. All proceeds he received from that album were given to charities in Sacramento that specialized in purchasing musical instruments for underprivileged kids in the Sacramento area, along with other local charities that helped victims of domestic and sexual violence. A second spoken word album would be released posthumously in 2021, called The Head Up Project, which featured the recording of a spoken word show that she participated in 2001. Number 83. The song MX is 37 minutes long on Around the Fur, but the song ends with the hidden track Damone. But there's also a secondary secret within that empty space, that being the short track Bong Hit, which was apparently Stefan taking a huge rip off of what he called the Zong Bong. This short snippet of degeneracy was apparently the band's answering machine message for the apartment they were all living at while recording the album.
Oh yeah, what's up? What we hitting up?
Number 84. When it comes to the song Black Moon, Chino explained the story behind it in an interview. This song was the very last thing recorded for the White Pony sessions. I remember getting a call from Be Real, asking me if I had finished recording the lines he had asked me to speak for the song Rock Superstar. I told him that I was finished, though I hadn't actually gotten around to doing it. He said, "Cool, I'm right around the corner from the studio. I'll swing by and pick it up." So I quickly ran into the vocal booth and asked Terry to hit record. I recorded around 2 minutes of me rambling and literally ejected the tape as he walked in. Anyway, that same day, I asked him if he would be down to record some vocals for a song that I had been working on titled Black Moon. And it would be sort of like a trade for the thing I had done for him. I ended up feeling kind of bad, because the original version of Black Moon was like 5 long verses. So Be Real wrote 3 full pages of lyrics compared to my couple sentences. Some trade. Cypress has and always will be some of my favorite rap. I felt truly honored for the opportunity to work with B. I want to do it again. Number 85. The song Digital Bath is about electrocuting a girl in a bathtub, then taking her out of the water and dressing her back up. Number 86. When it comes to the song 7 Words, Chino has stated, "I wrote it back when I was 16 years old. It's probably one of the angriest songs I've ever written. It was about being oppressed by the people around me, the authorities. I felt like the whole world was against me. It was like I was lashing out at those people." With the title referencing the phrase, "You have the right to remain silent," as it consists of 7 words. Number 87. In the music video for My Own Summer, it features a lot of shark footage while the band plays on a body of water. All of the sharks present in the video are actually mechanical, which is mixed in with actual shark footage. Apparently the director, Dean Carr, used funds from the record company to go to Australia so he could shoot actual footage of sharks. However, after over a week, he came back with none. So he essentially got to take an all-expenses-paid vacation. But after coming back with nothing, the record company sent him on a second trip, where he got the shark footage used in the video. Number 88. Right before the release of Koi no Yokan, at each tour stop and some independent record stores, you could get a very limited Leathers and Rosemary cassette tape, but only if you pre-ordered the album ahead of time. At shows, it would be available to the first 50 people for each stop, and that was it, making it one of the more sought-after collector's items in the band's discography. Number 89. Similar to the filming of Minerva's music video, Chi absolutely hated filming the music video for Hole in the Earth. Mainly because he thought the idea of having the band in space was really stupid, and had no connection to the band's vibe at all. Plus, after only a few takes, he was practically drenched in sweat. And in space, sweat doesn't exactly behave like it does on Earth, so it wasn't even done well in his opinion. In general, the band apparently doesn't take much creative say in the music videos, and instead leaves that up to other people. However, one video they did create the idea for was the video for Change, and for that reason, Chi believes that's the only one he's truly enjoyed. Number 90. Soon after the release of their music video for Be Quiet and Drive, during an interview, Chino discussed how he didn't much care for that video, and instead it was just a favor to the label. As he said, "I'm more into the harsh, brash parts of life that are just reality. I'm about to make a video myself and direct it for a song called Around the Fur. It'll be just crazy, and MTV, I'm sure won't play it, because you can't show that kind of stuff on TV." While that Around the Fur music video never saw the light of day, apparently it was created, but was never released because it featured nude scenes, one of which featured Stefan's junk, along with drug use and other illegal activities by the band members. To this day, that video has still never been released, and supposedly has only been seen by a couple people close to the band, making it lost media. Of those who have seen it, apparently the only footage from that video that was released is this picture of Stefan in this video for Digital Bath, and also on the CD for White Pony, as in the bonus content you can access from your computer. Apparently the video playing in the top left corner of Chino on the subway is from that Around the Fur music video. On that note, they really don't make physical media like they used to. Like within that same bonus content on White Pony, you can also play a little Pac-Man-like game where you control the pony and avoid the band members' heads, all while an 8-bit version of My Own Summer plays. Bonus content in media is such a lost art, and it makes me so sad. Number 91. Back during the Adrenaline tour, there was a time when the band spent a month opening for Kiss, which they claim was one of the hardest things they've ever done as a band. The reason for that was explained by Chino in an interview. The people that go to see Kiss are there to see Kiss. They don't give a shit less who's the opening band. Our songs were pretty abrasive. That sound had not really developed yet, and people didn't really understand it. So we'd be playing, and there would literally be guys sitting in the front row in full Kiss makeup just standing there, flipping us off for the whole set. Wouldn't put their arms down. There'd be times where I'd be like, "Motherfucker, I know your arm's tired, you can put it down. I know you hate us." It was really rough, but at the same time, still the experience of a lifetime. Number 92. The meaning behind the album name, Saturday Night Wrist, has been explained by the band in interviews. The actual inspiration was a reference to temporary nerve damage, specifically after getting very intoxicated and falling asleep on your arm in a weird way, that ends up temporarily paralyzing your hand for up to 6 days. The other explanations that fans have come up with are for both taking your own life and masturbation, though the band insists that neither of those are true. Number 93. The song Risk is named after the Risk board game, rather than the actual act of taking a risk. The meaning behind this is actually a nod to Chi, as during the eros sessions when the band would play cards and hang out, they apparently played a lot of the game Risk together as well. So the subsequent naming of the song is in reference to those good times together, not knowing they would soon be the last. Number 94. One of the band's most infamous songs would be Teething, a song they originally wrote before the band was initially signed. It was originally going to be featured on Adrenaline, but ended up being cut from the final track list at the last minute. However, it would instead be re-recorded and released on the soundtrack for the 1996 movie The Crow, City of Angels, to which the band would also be featured in the movie playing the song during the Day of the Dead festival scene. To this day, the song is still unavailable on streaming services, and remains one of the band's more popular deep cuts, so much so that they still play it live on occasion. While not near as popular as Teething, another song recorded for Adrenaline that didn't make the cut is the song known as Quirk or God's Hands, the demo of which can be found on YouTube. Number 95. When it comes to the song Passenger, it's famously known to feature Maynard James Keenan from Tool. However, he originally wasn't going to be featured at all. Chino explained the situation in an interview. Having Maynard perform on the record wasn't something that we planned on doing. We didn't plan on having any guest on the record. But being a fan of Tool and A Perfect Circle, once Maynard was involved, it was just a magical thing for us. Honestly, when he first started working with us, he wasn't supposed to sing with us. He was just working on the arrangements, riff structures, time signatures, and things like that. When it comes to Tool, they're really mathematical. I've been to their rehearsal space, and there's this big chart that just looks like calculus. The way they write songs, it's just crazy. It was good to have someone else who has different ways of writing songs, because everyone has a different way of doing it. He came in and we started working on this one song in particular, and he just grabbed the microphone and started singing along to it. And my jaw just dropped. All of a sudden, our band sounded like Tool. It was just crazy. Then, probably 2 months later, we went in to record the album, and I went in to record the vocals on it, and I just kept hearing his voice, this reoccurring melody with his voice coming over it. So I called him and asked if he wanted to come down and sing on the record, and he had no problem with it. Once he came in, I gave him sort of what I wanted the song to be about, and he wrote a couple ideas down. And the next day he came in with all the lyrics written all out with blank spaces where my lyrics were supposed to be. He's very professional like that. He wants everything set perfectly, which is the complete opposite to the way that I write, so it was cool. And then I went in and did my vocals over it, and it just seemed like our voices blended together very good. Yeah, it came out pretty good, so we decided to put it on the record. When it comes to playing Passenger live, the band generally only plays it when they have a guest vocalist to do Maynard's part. For instance, they've had Hayley Williams from Paramore join them on stage for Passenger multiple times. There's also been a few times they've invited fans from the crowd on stage to sing Maynard's part as well. Sadly, there's only been one known instance where Maynard actually joined them on stage for the song, and only an audio recording of the performance is known to exist. Number 96. Frank and Chino both agreed that the favorite music video they've made so far has been You've Seen the Butcher, basically because they got to be around a bunch of women in their underwear and pour blood on them. Gotta enjoy the little things. Number 97. While recording White Pony, the band rented out a house in California that was supposedly haunted. This location was popular lodging among bands and recording artists. And it wasn't until they stayed there that they found out the place was known for some supernatural stuff. Apparently Chino once woke up in the middle of the night and saw what looked like a hand floating in the corner of the room. He closed his eyes and ignored it for a while, and when he looked again, it was still there, but had moved a little. He honestly couldn't tell if he was actually seeing something, or if it was just the result of drugs he was taking at the time. But once Abe told him about some similar experiences he was having, they decided to contact the band Orgy, who had previously stayed there before them, and started asking the members if they had weird stuff happen to them too, to which they all began sharing their weird experiences with one another. Hearing all that, Chino simply left and stayed at a hotel the remainder of the recording sessions. It's also rumored that these experiences partially inspired the lyrics for Change, but I couldn't find an official source on that, so take it with a grain of salt. Number 98. With Deftones gaining an entire new wave of fans from their popularity on TikTok, their cover of Please 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 Let Me Get What I Want by the Smiths would go viral, and become one of their most popular songs on streaming services, with over 200 million plays as of making this video. With that in mind, the band would go on to play this cover live for the very first time at Coachella in 2024, as a way to say thank you to the fans for making it so popular, and have since played it 4 times in total. With that said, not including other cover songs, the other Deftones songs that have been played live the least include Anniversary of an Uninteresting Event, which has only ever been played live once, which was at the live benefit for Chi in November of 2009. Bumble D, a song originally written for Around the Fur, which was only ever played live once in 1997, and has never been released as a studio recording. Ceremony has only been played live once at Dia de los Deftones 2022. Crenshaw Punch, I'll Throw Rocks at You, has only been played live once in 1997. Finger of Death, a song originally written for Saturday Night Wrist, was only ever played live once in 2004. While the song itself has never been released as a studio recording, the instrumental from the band's sessions with Bob Ezrin has been leaked on YouTube. Gauze has only been played live once at Pasadena Daydream Festival in 2019. Goon Squad has only been played live once at Dia de los Deftones 2022. And not to go on a little tangent here, but with how the word goon has taken on a completely new meaning in recent times, that's gotta be one of the most unfortunate song titles ever. Smile has only been played live once at Dia de los Deftones 2019. And finally, This Place Is Death has only been played live once in 2010. That said, there are additionally some songs in their discography that have never been played live ever, namely multiple tracks off of Gore, Ohms, and Private Music. Number 99. When it comes to the name Eros for the unreleased album, apparently that name has been a long-time inside joke for the band, as whenever they were touring overseas, they'd come across a specific type of German adult films and magazines, and one of them would say eros in a very thick accent. Number 100. Back in 2003, while the band was on tour, there came a point over that summer where they had to cancel a few dates with Metallica. The reason being that Chino apparently found a way to kick himself in the nuts so hard during a show that he suffered a groin pull and had to go to the emergency room. After recovering for about a week, the band was able to continue the tour. But hearing that, I just want to know how he possibly managed to do that to himself, because no matter how I try and think about it, it just seems impossible. And finally, number 101. A lot of people refer to the band as the Deftones. However, contrary to popular belief, there is no "the" in their name. However, that wasn't always the case, as when the band first released Like Linus, they called themselves the Deftones. But once they started recording tracks for Adrenaline, they ultimately decided to drop "the" from their name. So while they were at one point called the Deftones, they are now only Deftones. Just wanted to make that very clear. But there you have it, everybody, 101 facts about Deftones. Hopefully you enjoyed the video and learned something new. If you did, make sure to drop a like. While you're at it, be sure to comment what band you'd like to learn 101 facts about next, and subscribe with notifications on so you don't miss it. I've got a lot of cool projects planned, so be sure to stay tuned. But with that, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all soon with the next video.
And I'm waiting, but nothing is changing.